sitting in class, watching those who are the complexion of the opposite leave, as they again relieve themselves from being in class full of those who are the complexion of me. It wasn't hard to see that the inequality symbols that I was learning in math of less than and greater than not only applied to numbers, they applied to colors. Shades of brown, invisibly crowned with dunce, became fitted to heads that seemed to learn at exponentially slower rates than others. Though we were an integrated school, the gifted segregated themselves through the white flight of Jim Crow's wings, enacting their civil rights of separate but equal PLCs that excluded NAACPs because this was the norm. Until one young white lady who taught Algebra 1 in 8th grade gave two black boys a math test that went against the pedagogy of low expectations. She saw in us the same desire to learn. It was just wrapped in brown skin that identified as black. She chose to see color because she recognized that everyone that was in her advanced math classes were white. She chose to rescue us from a curriculum that handed out 6 degrees of separation: Southern, poor, black, male, non-gifted, therefore unlikely. She changed Chester, my best friend, and my life. It wasn't as if I didn't believe I could do it. She believed I could. Her expectations of me tore down walls built by bricks of shame, inequity, and what's wrong with me? Her expectations of me exposed me to a land of possibilities found only in books where fairy tales exist, and those that were asleep there were awakened by a kiss. She became the Peter Pan to 2 lost boys, giving us access to Neverland. In this land where I had never been, all those that were here were expected to succeed. They were expected in high school to take honors and AP courses that I knew nothing about. One of the proudest moments of my life was walking down my high school hallway during freshman orientation with my mom, when a welcoming tone of normalcy reached out to me like a slick arm stretch at the movies and said, "Hi, I'm your freshman English 9 teacher." In one split second, the eloquence of Malcolm, the bravery of Rosa, the championing of Du Bois courageously spoke, "No, I have honors." After being on this earth for 14 years, it was in that English honors class that I first learned about the Holocaust through our summer book reading Night by Elie Wiesel. All I had ever known about was the enslavement of Africans, but had no clue that darkness had descended upon a face of people whose skin complexion was the very opposite of the book's name. This blew my mind as the winds of equity began to thrust me into competitive GPAs of those of my white peers, because honors and AP courses gave you a half to a whole grade point. Could this be the reason why brown faces perform so poorly? Because the bandwidth carrying our information was on dial-up speed, while fibers of interconnected networks sped up the advancement of those privy to a system that supported them and not those that looked like me? I was in class asking Ashley Woolard for homemade deer jerky because it was hunting season. I don't know if y'all know it or not, but black people, we don't hunt. Diversity. I began to walk the trail of tears paved by my ancestors, just to be draped in cords that used to shackle them, but now loosed me to pursue the dreams of a king. In 8th grade, I fell in love with math. And 20 years later, I find myself teaching in the same grade and subject where one teacher's expectations of me changed the course of my life. Thank you Mrs. Simmons. I grew up in the very small town of Belhaven, North Carolina. It's located in the eastern part of our state. As you can see, there's not much there. I was a bright young man. I loved learning. My mom had a nickname for me. It didn't stick, but she had a nickname for me. She called me Mastermind. And it's not because I had a big head, because that head is huge. But it was because I loved learning, and I loved being right. But as I matriculated through middle school, I found out that there were some kids leaving the classroom, and I later found out that these were the gifted kids. I was left in class wondering, why wasn't I being pulled out? Because my grades were just as good as theirs were, and sometimes I scored even higher than the gifted kids. So why was I left in class? So in 8th grade, Mrs. Simmons gave Chester and me. There's one thing that has not changed about that picture, is my love for food. It has not changed. Not at all. Anybody knows me, not at all. So she gave us a math test to see if we could get into Algebra 1 in 8th grade. We both passed, and we were let into Algebra 1. Other than currently being in grad school at UNCC, this was one of the most challenging times of my life because the gifted kids took pre-algebra in 7th grade while I was left in a 7th grade standard class and then put into an 8th grade Algebra 1 class. So Mrs. Simmons, recognizing me, changed the trajectory of my educational journey. I was now in class with students who were going to take honors and AP courses in high school. I knew nothing about these classes. And so Mrs. Simmons, looking at me and saying, hey, you can do that, changed my life forever. So what is expectation? Expectation, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is defined as a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. Expectation is the strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. Teacher expectations have been studied for a while now. In 1964, Robert Rosenthal did an experiment. He told teachers that he was going to give their students a test. He called the test the Harvard Test of Inflected Acquisition. Sounds deep. Sounds real deep. And so as a result of the test and the students that the teachers predicted that were going to do well, teachers began to treat those students differently. The test had the means of saying who was about to grow intellectually. And based off of those results, teachers began to do this. They gave students more attention. They gave those particular students, they smiled at them more. Teachers gave those students more time on tests and assessments. And those teachers had more contact with those students. The only problem is that Rosenthal, he lied. He intentionally lied. The test did not measure which kids were about to grow intellectually. It did nothing of the sorts. In fact, what happened is that based on the interactions that the teachers had with those students, the students' IQs grew. And the only variable that was introduced was teacher expectations. Another study by Gershenson, Holt, and Papa George states that there is direct evidence that demographic mismatch influences how a teacher forms expectations over a student's long-run investments. While a teacher's perceptions reflect their current views of abilities or traits, their expectations are prone to becoming self-fulfilling prophecies. Our current reality and our demographics of CMS. While the demographics of its teachers, on the other hand, are, let's face it, most of our many of us, multicultural interactions are found in our schools. It's not found in our neighborhoods nor our places of worship usually, because as the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. So your black reality, white reality, whatever race you are reality, is usually not the reality of someone of a different race. So it's not surprising that we have differing expectations for different subgroups because that's all we know about them. But the question is, do we really know them? Mrs. Simmons gave me a chance, and all I'm really asking is that you do the same for your students. In 2007, I left Raleigh, where I attended and graduated from the NC State University, home of the Wolfpack, and I moved to Pittsburgh for 9 years, and out of those 9 years, 8 of those years I taught. And I decided that it was time to come back home. Pittsburgh is really cold for somebody that grew up in the South. And so in 2016, I said it was time to come back home. But home was not Belhaven, North Carolina, because there was nowhere in the world that I was going back to the country after being in Raleigh and Pittsburgh cities. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to come to Charlotte and just check out Charlotte. I fell in love with this place. And I returned back to Pittsburgh, and I began to do some research. I wanted to teach at a school that was really diverse. And so as I was researching, I came across Piedmont IB Middle School. Piedmont! You know. See, those are my people. Those are my people. And so I looked at the demographics of Piedmont, and I saw that this was a 60% black or African American school, and it was an A+ school as well. And then I looked online and I found a video of all the things that happened at Piedmont. And before I came, I was like, there is no way I could teach at this school because they did so much. But then I took a leap of faith and I contacted Ms. Jackie Barone and I said I would like to apply for the vacant position. I got the job, and this is what I've discovered that make this place so different because I've never seen a place like this before. When you come to Piedmont, you are expected to be one of the best. And as I moved on and I started teaching at Piedmont, I noticed that in the demographics of the highest level of math in our school, Math 1 and 2, I noticed that there was little representation of Hispanic and African American males. And so we have club day at Piedmont every Monday at 6 o'clock. And so I decided to start a club that would help alleviate those demographics that I was seeing. And I called the club Aftermath. Aftermath. A club aftermath class that focuses on the aftermath of minority boys pursuing aftermath. Aftermath. Let me say it again. I don't think some of y'all got it. It's a club aftermath class that focuses on the aftermath of minority boys pursuing aftermath. Y'all ain't got to clap. I thought it was cool. Listen, I thought it was cool. And so Aftermath is designed, it's made up of 17 of the highest performing black and Hispanic boys that came to Piedmont in 5th grade who scored 5s on their EOGs. And then after 5th grade, they come to 6th grade and they join the club. And so we sat down and we talked about their 6th grade EOGs. And my heart sank because out of 17 of those students, all of them went down except for 3. And when I say went down, I mean they dropped from 5 to 4s. They dropped 10 to 15 percentile points. And I looked at my boys and I was like, y'all, what happened? And so they pretty much reverberated the same thing in their voice. Well, in 5th grade, Mr. O'Neill, I was like, I wanted to come to Piedmont. And so I really worked hard, and I felt special because I was one of the few minority boys in the class that was really doing well. And so I said, I want to go to Piedmont. And then when I got here, I was like, y'all do too much. There's projects and there's activities and then we're here and then we're there. And then I looked around and I looked and I said, hey, there's more people that look just like me. And I decided that it was just time to chill. This is what they told me in their way. And then I looked at them and I said this to them. I said the expectation of this club is that by the time you get into 8th grade, you should at least be in a Math 1 class, and that some of you will qualify to be in Math 1-2, which is broken up by semesters. This is what they taught me. They taught me is that if you do not put expectations on them, they will fall through the cracks again. And so I ask you this. What do you expect from your students?
In 7th grade, my ELG score was a 2, and in 8th grade, my ELG score was a 4, which made me go from the 51st percentile to the 82nd percentile.
On the exam, I got a 97 and ended up in the 99th percentile, which I'm pretty sure means I only got like one question wrong. If you told me that at the beginning of the year, I would laugh in your face.
7th grade, my EOG score was a 5 in the 90th percentile, but with Mr. O'Neill, I shot up to a 5 in the 97th percentile, which was really good.
I got a 2 on my 7th grade EOG, and when I moved to Mr. O'Neill's class, he helped me learn better, he helped me ask questions, he helped me comprehend things better, and my score skyrocketed to a 4.
This is what I expect from my students. After 11 years of teaching, I know this to be true. Expectations for all lift the expectation of all. Thank you.